Is anyone else getting a Grisha School for the Gifted Youngsters vibe when the training montage was going around? Just me? Okay. Welcome to That to Rap, the channel where I review TV shows, movies, and movie trailers. Today's TV show that I will be reviewing is episode 3 of the hit Netflix original series, Shadow and Bone. If you haven't seen this episode or aren't caught up with this series, consider this your spoiler warning. So now on to the review. I enjoyed this episode. It seems to be picking up pace as far as to what the actual, we all know what the plot is, but getting into some more heavy details, some more reveals. I'm definitely enjoying the pacing of this story, the way they're trying, not too carefully because there is some inconsistencies, but they're definitely trying to not lose us. Maybe this show is very simplified with a more complicated setting, but the story is very easy to follow, and you're only really following two sections, right? You're following the general with Alina, and we have our three amigos over here trying to traverse the void, and I guess a little bit with her childhood friend, which is the third story, but he wasn't really in this episode. More or less he was in it, but only through the letters that she was writing to him, kind of like a coping mechanism, almost like a journal, because she acknowledges she doesn't know why she's writing this, but she just needs to write it, which is great when you're in a situation. I like that mental health part that's going on with it. At least that's the way I saw it. It's a very therapeutic, a good outlet to use when you're in high stress environment, situation, dealing with loss, dealing with pain, dealing with so many things. It's good to have a journal, write those feelings out so you get an outlet for those emotions, for everything that you're feeling. So I'm glad that they showed that multiple times, because I think nowadays, especially with what's going on in the real world, maybe some youngsters, not only youngsters, people that see this show, see it and be like, are reminded by it. But I think all of us have been exposed to that saying, to that way of self-help with getting a journal. I think all of us had a journal when we were in elementary school, and they told us to write in it. I think even in middle school, they had us write in our journal at least 10-15 minutes. Maybe it's not done so much anymore, but maybe it'll rekindle that thought. Maybe say, hey, it would be great for me to write a journal, even though in hers is a letter. But again, she acknowledges the fact that she doesn't even know if he's going to receive those letters, at least as her childhood friend Malian. But so I was glad that they did that. So I'm enjoying this show and the slow burn. They're just not bombarding us with a bunch of stuff to make it confusing. The world is confusing enough that we're getting introduced this fantasy world. So I appreciate the fact that the producers and writers, I don't mean this with any disrespect to the show or to the writers or anything, but they dumbed it down for us. I think the most complicated name is getting these names correct. So that's why sometimes you hear me say childhood friend, not because I don't know his name, but I'm sure I'm butchering it when I say it. And that's kind of going around just in Hollywood, why they're using these crazy D&D game or D&D names or whatever, these really fantastical names that aren't really based on any real life names or whatever. But again, I could be wrong. So anyways, I'm thoroughly enjoying this episode. And before I get to the good, the bad, and the ugly of this episode, which is nitpicking, I think the episode was probably in total like 45 minutes, disregarding the credits. That now for every freaking show, not just Marvel, for every show there's like 10 minutes of credits, which is ridiculous. You guys need to speed those up and give us more show. But I am so enjoying Kaz, Ineg, and Jesper. Those three characters are making this show super enjoyable, and for the first 3 episodes, they are carrying this series. Maybe once I turn this corner on episode 4 and 5, we'll get a little bit more with the General and Alina. But for the first 3, they've been carrying it. And it's been a joy to see the way those characters are so different but yet work so good together. Is hats off to the actors. The haircuts on Kaz and Jesper, I mean, I don't think they're period correct. They're more like 2021 correct. But I think after the first episode, I just let it go, and it's just grown on me. But the interaction between those three, and maybe that was by design, since they are going to be traveling together, and they're like a little bit of a crime syndicate group, if you will. But enjoy the seriousness, yet the standoffish of an egg, but then just the characters, their charisma that they all three of them exude, especially Jasper. I love his almost Billy the Kid feel with his gun. So anyways, let's get on to the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I want to end it in a high note, or in a good note. So we'll start off with the ugly. The ugly is something that I just find super annoying. Is the constant harassment and belittling of Alina is super irritating. Now, I get that there's a racial undertone, and I'm disregarding that, even though in today's current environment, 2021, away from the fantasy, there's this movement about stopping the hate against Asian American. And I don't know whether this show planned it this way or if it just coincidence, just happened to be that. And I appreciate, just like I did with the Winter Soldier, about the racial undertones that they're trying to address, even though it's debatable whether the Falcon and the Winter Soldier did it a little bit too much, and the numbers as they're coming up might be showing that they did it a little bit too much. But the fact that what is irritating to me is that she is the Sunbringer. She is this myth, this almost messiah figure. So how anyone is harassing her so much, knowing that she could be the thing that turns the world from the darkness that they've been living in to a bright, prosperous future, is so ridiculous and irritating and off-putting. Not that I like the actress or even the character. It's just ridiculous to me that would be the case. We've seen it not only in modern history, in other works of fiction or whatever. When there's a person of this much importance, they're not almost, they are venerated, they're protected, they are exalted to I mean, look at what we do with our sports figures, and that's not even, and they're super valuable. So if you're talking about someone that's gonna save the world, and she's gonna save the world, not like, without getting all religious, not like a Jesus figure where everything about him is covered in secrecy or innuendos or conspiracy theories. When you physically know, hey, we just saw her, when the general cut her, and the light came out of her arm, we know with no shadow of a doubt that she is the Messiah, this Sunbringer. And then in episode 3, we find out the king wants to take credit for her. And we see the whole, show, I guess, they put on in front of him when the general, brings up the darkness and she brings the light, which I'll get to that a little bit later. So she's protected by the king. So knowing that, and I'm taking 1800 history here into effect. If you piss off the king, and whether it was riding his horse, killing one of his animals, sleeping with one of his many wives, you would die. You would be put to death. This show's maybe not that brutal, but I'm just taking real life history, and maybe that's my mistake, and attaching this to this show. But there is no way that she would be getting abused and bullied and all this stuff. And maybe that's it, as I'm saying this, maybe the bullying aspect is something that the show wants to put out there, that no matter how important you are, you could still be bullied. But it's so ridiculous, and I'm basing that on the premise of the show, that there's this void that has to be, this darkness that's impeding the society from being what it can be. So all of a sudden we have this character that's gonna change everything, and not even the admiration and protection of a king does any difference. Anybody who's anybody, whether it's storytelling, whether it's a history, whether it's whatever. I don't know how that doesn't get annoying by this episode 3, because it does. It happens in episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, and they keep on showing us how she's been bullied because she was different. We get it, show. Bullying is bad, being different is bad, and you could show it with the other characters that are Shu or whatever they call them, people in the show, but not when it's obvious to everyone, at least in her circle, that's seen this, that she is a special kind of a person that's gonna change the lives of every color, every person, woman or man, child or anything, that she is gonna change the outlook of the future. There is no absolute way that this kind of bullying would persist. And yet, in episode 3, it got elevated. So I'm hoping that when I start episode 4 and episode 5, because I think there's only 8 episodes, they cut that shit out, because it's really annoying, as you could tell by my ending. The bad is something that I, kind of brushed on a little bit earlier, but in that scene when the general brings Alina to the king and is gonna show her powers, we see him bring up the darkness, and it goes to the side of the chamber in that castle, wherever they're in that room or in this castle, and we see the darkness surround the walls and the ceiling. But when and this is more an indication not on the actors or anybody that was actually acting in that scene, but more of the CGI. When they start talking, this is the general and Alina, they're talking to each other, but you don't see the darkness anymore in the background. And he's trying to prove a point how she's going to take away the darkness. But the CGI, maybe, if I'm wrong, please someone explain it to me in the comments. Was there some kind of symbolism that I missed? But I was figuring that he's bringing up the darkness so she could show how she's going to take away the darkness. I'm still not fully understanding how and I know they hinted that he enhances Grisha's powers and stuff like that, but we haven't touched a lot in him as far as the full extent of his powers. But the CGI or the graphics, whoever the final, how they let that through, or maybe it was by design, but all I kept on looking was at the back, and I'm like, where did the darkness go? Like, she hasn't done the light thing yet, so why is it no longer in the walls? Why is it no longer on the ceiling? And then obviously we see that he touches her and boom, she explodes into the light, and we all get like, oh my god, that looks amazing, da 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 da. But what happened to the darkness? So the fact that, at least in my understanding, the way I'm seeing this, is that it would have darkened the scene, so they just went out of it. But when you have that first shot where he's bringing up the darkness, you have to continue that illusion for us, because it takes us out. And I'm not the only one that thought this way. A lot of people thought the same thing, like, where did the darkness go when he brought it up? And maybe a lot of people don't care, and mind you, like I said, it's a nitpick, but it did take me out of the story, because instead of following their dialogue, I had to watch the episode again, which is great for the Netflix numbers, because I watched it again just to be able to be sure that I didn't see or I was missing something. And even because I missed out on the dialect between afterwards, the whole thing, I kept on thinking, well, where is it? Next thing I'm hearing him say, oh, she's with me and I'm gonna train with me. I'm like, wait, was there dialogue before that? Because all I kept, my mind just went to, like, what happened to the darkness? Where did it go? Did it go before that? Because it went before she exploded. There was no darkness on the walls. But anyways, and finally, on the good, I don't know if this is the way it's going, but it seems that they are building up this love story between Alina and Malian, her childhood friend, best friend. And even in episode 1, when they're in the military, the way she looks at him and the way he looks at her, there's more than friendship there. There's more than just this, oh, he's like my sister, he's like my brother. And I get there might be a little bit of that in there, but there's definitely looks of I love you more than. And with the way they're, when they were separated, the way they're both missing each other, and even how they ended this episode. they're both, for the first time it seems since they were really young, sleeping or apart from without from one another, even though in the beginning we know that a few months happened when Malian joined the military and when Alina joined them in the camp where we first get introduced to them. So it can't be the first time that they have been apart, but the show goes out of its way to do that, which again I could nitpick and put that in my bad or even in the ugly, but I'm not. I left that alone because I think they're building up a love story. At least I hope. I've tried to stay away from any spoilers, from any kind of thing that's gonna ruin this for me. So I do enjoy that buildup, and I'm hoping that's a payoff. Because if not, I'm going to rant about this so much because they, for the first 3 episodes, that's all it seems that they're doing. So let me know. Am I wrong in that? No, don't let me know because you guys will probably ruin it for me. Like, oh, you gotta wait to episode 6 or episode 7. Don't write nothing in the comments because I'm trying super hard to watch an episode, think about the episode, and then review the episode, and I don't want to have a preconceived notion as to what I'm watching because then my mind goes off and creates its own conclusions. But so I'm hoping that does pay off. That does pay off. They make a cute couple, and they will make a nice kind of I was gonna say Romeo and Juliet, but not really that kind of a story. It'll just be a nice love story that they met. They knew each other from childhood. They grew up to be young adults. They went through a lot of trauma, through a lot of changes together and separate. And ultimately, they're going to find themselves apart from each other, it seems, to finally come together. And who knows? We'll see. But those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And like always, that's a wrap.